There's this thing called UFOs that's real.
Conscious beings coming through the walls.
You can sit at a bar and talk about an alien abduction.
How much truth do I really want?
Roswell.
Explore your consciousness.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. It's Mysterious Forces Live, and it is Saturday, October 13th, 2018. Thank you so much for being here. I'm so glad you could join us on this Saturday night. Tonight, I have a great guest. His name is Brad Olsen, and there's probably a lot of you who will watch this show just because it is Brad Olsen and you already know who he is and what he does. For those of you who don't know who Brad Olsen is, you're going to have your mind blown here in a little bit after we do a bit of an introduction to tonight's show. So hello, welcome. You might notice that I'm wearing a hoodie. I usually don't wear this casual of stuff on the show, but it cooled down to 65 degrees here out in the high desert. Finally today, we had rain and overcast. And this isn't a weather report show, but I'm going to tell you one thing. After having such a hot summer and for it to just cool off like that and have the temps drop off, it has felt great. And today's been a good day for that, a good change in the weather. I want to talk a little bit about Brad's Brad's here. I want to talk a little bit about Brad's career because it is it covers lots of territory, and to try to just nail down any one thing would be kind of to I don't know, belabor the point. I'm going to just give a few of the things that he's done and give a little bit of context, and then we'll have Brad join us. He is a publisher. He is an athlete. He's an author. He's been on Ancient Aliens. You've seen him on CNN. You've seen him on the Travel Channel. He's written several travel books. He has written the esoteric series, Future Esoteric and Modern Esoteric. And he's also the author of the Sacred Places series, which features 108 destinations in each book. And he is a world traveler, and he just has an incredible story. Brad Olsen, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you for having me on. It's a pleasure to join you tonight.
So we were talking a little bit before the show started, and I don't think I'm letting the cat out of the bag here in that you were telling me that you are about to set out on a 5-month journey, even tonight after this interview. And this is going to have an impact on the work that you're doing in 2019. Can you tell us a little bit about what you're going to be doing next year?
Sure. Well, right after this interview is over, I'm here with Emily Infinity, my partner, and we are heading out to Vallejo to the World Peace Through Technology headquarters, who is sponsoring our trip to South America for 4 months. And we're going to create some bumpers on a website called peacetour.com. People can follow different episodes we're going to create on the trip. And I'm also a speaker at Stargate to the Cosmos in Albuquerque 3 weeks from now. Then we fly out a few days later for 4 months in South America for 6 countries and Antarctica, if we can get there. I think we will.
Wow. Are you going to be writing books based on the journeys that you're about to take?
Well, geez, if we can get down to the so-called Illuminati Disneyland and maybe check out that 3-mile-long UFO in the ice, there would be several books out of that. But yeah, I am doing research for my 3rd book in the esoteric series called Beyond Esoteric, The Ultimate Journey. So definitely a fact-finding mission. And then my lecture series for 2019 will be predicated on this trip.
Wow, that's amazing. I want to talk a little bit about Mesoamerican culture, First Nations cultures here in North America. It's of particular interest to me. I grew up in the Midwest, and I've been to some Indian mounds, and I have. I don't know, when you grow up in the Midwest, in certain places, you kind of have an inherent knowledge of Indian lore, myth, and even historical locations by simply being a local and having the local community have these beliefs, or that something happened in a particular place. Can we I think what I'm trying to get at here with you, Brad, is I want to talk a little bit about these ancient traditions and humanity's connection with the sacred in that sense, but how we can bridge the gap between that world and the world we're living in now, which is modern society, where our needs as individuals have shifted so much because our community has been decentralized, and people are leading much more individual types of lives instead of a communal life like it was back then. And how can we get in touch with the sacred in those kinds of ways here in modern society, the way it was done tens of thousands of years ago?
Yeah, great question. I did 3 books in the Sacred Places 108 Destination series. And you started out by asking about Mesoamerica. That is in my book, Sacred Places Around the World, all the sites around the world, including what we're going to go experience in South America. But I did a whole book on Sacred Places North America. And what's really interesting is the layout of many of these mound cities along the Mississippi River Valley very much resemble the layout of Mesoamerican sacred cities. And the central mound is at the back of the central courtyard with flanking pyramid or mounds on the other side, just like Teotihuacan outside of Mexico City, like Chichen Itza, like Tulum, and many others. You find a distinct similarity to Cahokia Mounds, to Nazca area, Natchez, I should say, and other very prominent mound sites. And so the second part of your question is, how do you get in touch with at these same places? And I often think that if people were to go and visit them, and all my books have very detailed directions how to get there, and take a quiet moment and explore the site and just sit down and think about what it all means and what it seems to you has some kind of significance. And I've had some of my best light bulb moments doing exactly this at Sacred Places. And it's really helped me to more further understand the place I'm at and just kind of process how incredibly important a gift to humanity these locations are, and how important it is that we preserve them. And for that reason alone, working on these Sacred Places of books has been a very rewarding experience.
Yeah, it's amazing work. Do you think that universities and institutions that may or may not have governments behind them, like the Smithsonian, do you think they've suppressed evidence of certain details of ancient cultures? For example, I grew up knowing someone personally in my life that was an arrowhead hunter, and he had told me several times about a tribe of giants that had Indian-like artifacts associated with their sites, but their bones were much larger. And I've heard other stories about this larger race of people in North America. And do you think that kind of stuff is being suppressed?
Oh, it most definitely is, not just in North America, but we'll focus on that for a second. The talk I'm giving, one of my talks in Albuquerque, New Mexico at Stargate to the Cosmos in 2 weeks, is called The Forbidden Archaeology of Giants in Our Prehistory. And I chronicle many instances where the bones were just up and swept away by Smithsonian agents. It's almost like the FBI coming onto a crime scene and said, we'll take it over from here. one very prominent case in Wisconsin, just over the border from where I grew up in Illinois, was very well documented. It was in all the local newspapers. It was a university dig from Beloit, Wisconsin, and they came across giants, and not just tall guys like me, but 7-footer, 8-footer, 9-footers with other distinctions such as an extra finger, an extra toe, double rows of teeth in some cases. And this just did not fit with the narrative of the Native Americans in this country and the uniqueness of who we thought we are, to now be sharing this continent with human-like but not quite human entities. And what we call Smithsonian Gate was a concerted effort that I do believe is still going on to this day to control the narrative and to present this cookie cutter version of history that's in all our history books from the time we're in grade school all the way up through university. And this is sort of like this holy grail that cannot be chipped away with these out of place artifacts or these findings of giants. But there is so much evidence, and it does go around the world, that I think if people saw my 2-hour presentation on how much evidence there is, they would come away thinking, yeah, there is something here that has been suppressed.
Absolutely. I think the evidence of that is overwhelming. Do you think, are you one of the people that subscribes to the concept that there's an antediluvian or Atlantean root to some of these meso sites, some of these sacred sites that kind of went around the rim of the southern Atlantic and down into the, around South America?
Yeah, absolutely. In my book, Modern Esoteric, it starts out, the lifology section is the long and storied history of life on this earth and the evidence of antediluvian civilizations quite all around the world once again. And now the most exciting findings are coming out of Antarctica. And it could be that this was perhaps Atlantis, or at least an outpost of it, because there's also megalithic ruins found down there. There's a pyramid group, much in the same exact proportions of the Giza pyramids in Egypt. And also these craft, one 3-mile long. My friend Emery Smith, he was a speaker at Contacting the Desert as well. He says there's known 3 of them now, and one can be visited with proper clearance out of Palmer Station, which is where Emily and I are aiming to go to really try to break this story. I don't know if we're going to get past the penguins, but we're going to try.
Right. The Pentagon considers global warming a national security threat. They've made no secret about that. That's their official stance. Do you think part of that stance is connected to Antarctica, and that as global warming proceeds and the ice shelves and the glaciers recede, that perhaps some of the evidence of these ancient cultures or even ancient technologies will be exposed by that and kind of upset the apple cart in terms of all this suppression and secrecy?
Great question. My friend Michael Sala, he did his presentation on Antarctica. He said there are 5 volcanoes that are erupting down there. That could be leading to the melting ice. It could be human activity. It could be something out in the universe. But let's just say it is melting, and that is what is exposing a lot of these artifacts. And according to Emery Smith, people know about it. That's why all the elite keep going down there. John Kerry on election day, and Patriarch Krill and Prince Harry with his buddies went cross country out to see it. There was a big data dump a couple months ago by Strava, and it showed this location where they all seem to be going and doing loops around, checking something out. But you check it out on Google Earth, as I have, and you won't see nothing but a big snowbank. But there is a landing pad, there is a runway there, and like a little secondary base. And that could be part of this collective Illuminati Disneyland that has been so much of interest to the elite with a lot of money and a lot of clearance to get down there and do it. Wouldn't it be amazing if we could open that up to everybody to check it out? And once again, it would completely rewrite history. And I think that's where the fear is in letting civilians like us go down there and investigate.
I'd like to kind of zoom in on an expedition like that and get your take on like a little more in detail. What would an expedition like that look like? If you had the funding in place, if you had a sponsor or you got a situation in place where the funds were available, what would you have to do to prepare for an expedition like that?
Well, we have been preparing for an expedition like that. We do have a GoFundMe page. It's Brad Olsen, Emery Smith, Antarctica. Emery is working on the clearance because he has a lot of people in the military that could do this. We are looking for a financier. So if that were to come along, what would happen is we could pay for an expedition. We could pay to rent the planes, hire a pilot, pay for the supplies. We got the camera gear, but perhaps we could get satellite uplink. And the ideal fantasy would be to do a live webcast and go out there and investigate it and be among the first journalists that could announce this to the world.
Absolutely. Do you think it would be possible to supply proof of those types of artifacts other than photographic evidence? Would it be possible to get anything physical to bring back, or maybe even chemical, some kind of scientific, verifiable, measurable evidence?
Well, geez, if we could do a live webcast and show us flying in and walking out, and then the location that Emery talks about where people go into the craft is called the door. If we could walk in the door and the cameras are rolling, I don't know if they'd let us take anything. I doubt they would, but just to get 15, 20 minutes of footage could just be earth-changing.
Oh, yeah, no, you're right. It would be a historic event indeed. I know that you've traveled extensively in the East and that you've even lived in Japan. Have you found analogs in Japan or in other locations in the East that are analogs to these meso sites, to these North American sites, or even an analog to what you suspect is down in Antarctica? Because I don't think we hear a lot about what's in the East. I think we hear about Buddhist temples and we hear a lot about Tibet and Tibetan monasteries, but I don't think we hear about energy vortexes or those types of locations in the East.
And you mentioned Japan. There is a location in the far southern islands of Japan, one island called Yonaguni, that has some megalithic structures under the water that have only been discovered in the last few decades, but right angles, steps, massive carved blocks right out of the rock itself that could not have been anything but shaped by some intelligence. And the fact that it is many meters under the sea would have only been exposed during the last ice age, or perhaps some kind of cataclysm where it sank. But it's still very well preserved and now a very famous scuba diving site. So that's one of the oldest. I would say that would probably go back to Lemurian times, which was a continent in the Pacific that was rumored to have sunk prior to the Atlantis civilization.
Right. And I think this is that nexus point where I can bring this back around. I think my first question was too complicated and it had too many parts. And I think we needed to come this far in the conversation for the audience where this part of the question makes more sense. These ancient traditions, the way that architecture was done, the way that these ancient sites were built, obviously many people think that there were exotic technologies used, to say the least, if not outright what would consider to be psychic or metaphysical abilities that were used to build these sites. How can we in modern times, how can a person living in New York or LA who lives in a condo and has a career and they're kind of weighed down with the concerns of modern living, how can they create a space and get in contact with those kind of energies and I guess find some grounding? Because, and the reason I ask this question, and it's important to me, I think right now we're seeing a lot of the ills of society kind of bubble up, whether it's gun, and this is not a political show. Don't take me wrong. The gun violence, violence in and of itself, corruption, bad behavior in general, whether it's of the average citizen or government officials or anyone else. We see a lot of bad behavior right now, and we're society, in terms of society, we seem a little ill right now, like we're needing something. And how can we bridge the gap to those ancient traditions and find some kind of equilibrium in this modern chaos?
That's a great question. And if you look over my shoulder, this beautiful tapestry is sacred geometry. It's a mandala pattern. These are patterns that are based on mathematics, and mathematics is a language that could be understood and is understood by some of the greatest minds in this planet. It's also been said that God speaks in geometric forms or in a mathematic way, because these are true constants in the universe. So when you combine that with a beautiful mandala such as this, which Emily Infinity has through the artists that did them, and we'll have them at Stargate to the Cosmos, our vending table. I feel like building a personal shrine, as you're saying, to get through hard times, having a little space to yourself that perhaps has some mementos, family pictures, things that you value, sacred geometry. This helps calm the mind. And if you're into meditation or yoga, you know that visual images will come into your mind. And I have a chapter in my book, Modern Esoteric, all about sacred geometry, and also some examples about how people can use this information to better their own lives. And you'd be surprised how important symbols like these really are in our lives. And there's another chapter called Sacred Symbols. And you can read a lot in just a visual image. You could perhaps write a book about one visual image, such as this behind me, and so much importance that can be incorporated into it. So a lot of things we can do to get us through these trying times. And believe me, it's one of the most trying of all. But I just would like to say everybody has a purpose here. Everybody has a reason to be alive, and we can all do this together. And we do have more strength in our numbers when we combine and have conversations such as this, and just try to up the vibrational level, one person at a time. That's the best we can do.
Right. I agree. And I didn't want to make this too rudimentary. I'm not trying to make these questions on this topic too elemental, because I know that a lot of your research goes pretty deep. And I know that a lot of viewers have done research and read books and had their own experiences. And some of this stuff can be taken for granted. But at the same time, I think it's important to bring these principles back up, because I think we just simply forget. I think people get busy and they get distracted and they forget. And I think it's good to have these gentle kind of reminders, whether it's this kind of conversation or this kind of information. I just see a greater need for people to kind of unplug from the media madness. I guess it's a personal issue with me, the complete inundation of the media in our day-to-day lives. We're carrying smartphones in our pockets. There's a television screen at the gas pump. There's a television screen at the aisle of department stores trying to sell you something. I mean, it's like the video stimulation, the way they're affecting our brains. It is a complete manipulation. And these symbols that you're talking about, some of this is being used against us in terms of marketing, subliminal messaging. I think some of it's just for artistic use, and I think some of it's more nefarious. And as you mentioned, these ancient symbols, that is incorporated into many, many logos for space agencies and aerospace companies. All of these things are speaking to us on a subliminal level. And we kind of have to wake up and fight back. And I guess that's why I'm asking you these questions, because I just want you to remind our viewers how they can fight back, how they can push back against all this stuff. and carve out a space for themselves.
Sure. Well, I'm a firm believer in nonviolent resistance. I don't think taking arms and trying to fight them, we get slaughtered that way. No, the revolution is consciousness. The revolution is all of us waking up. And the veil is lifting. It is the Great Awakening. I believe that in so many different ways. We're seeing it right before our very eyes. So just remember, this is a very historic and momentous period of history when all of this is starting to come out. And it's up to us to make sense of it and not let us get us down and drag us through the dirt. And the other part of your question about symbols, the nefarious ones in everyday life, well, take a walk in a Masonic temple sometime. Tell me how many symbols you see. And these are people who have sought power, consolidated power, believe in this new world order, but it's not going to happen because the Great Awakening is going to stop this in their tracks. And I'm not just trying to pick on Masonic people, but I'm just trying to illustrate how vitally important symbols are to the cabal and the Illuminati, the secret government, whatever you want to call them. They definitely do exist, and they do work in these clandestine ways. And having symbols hidden in plain sight is part of their MO.
Yes, absolutely. Do you think UFO disclosure is also wrapped up in all this? That in this, in terms, we're kind of talking about two different things. We're talking about consciousness and how much control we have over our individual lives or our perception and experience of life. But then there's also kind of the technological issue of UFO disclosure. But all these things have a deep root, that this control that the I don't know quite how to categorize them, but the powers that be that are behind all of this, whether you want to call them the Rothschilds or the Illuminati or whatever, there's a lot of different names, but I tend to think of it as more of a conglomerate of banking interests. I think
it is.
And it's the money that is really at the root of all this.
Sure.
And I don't know. I guess, and I'm always looking for a way to bring up these issues and try to get people such as yourself who are experts in this type of information. I just want to get it out there and get people to wake up to this stuff and think twice.
Well, you are the alternative media. So am I. And we do our little bits to put our strengths together and help try to make people aware of this in a non-confrontational, non-egotistical way. It's just people understand we are going through this growth period. It's almost like at puberty. Almost everybody has this awkward phase where they're just coming into their adult body. And I think the human race is quite like that. We're still adolescents. We're still very childlike in many ways. And you brought up UFOs or exopolitics and ETs. There are benevolent ETs. They want us to take control of our own fate. They don't want to be our nanny babysitters and come down here, or we treat them like gods, as has probably been the case in the past. They want us to solve our own problems. And I'm fully on board with that and agreeing. But we're in this awkward teenage phase right now. And until we become full-grown adults, things aren't going to feel right, and we're going to be awkward and trip over ourselves from time to time. But it's going to happen, and we're going to come out of this and prevail. There will be a golden age, a utopian era of high tech if we don't let it get out of control, because we're also walking on the edge of the razor there with AI and robotics. And if this gets out of control, we're in big trouble. But if we can harness it to use it for our benefit, then perhaps this will aid us in this graduation process.
Absolutely. And I want to get to the root of that. It just hit me as I was listening to you say that. Do you think that humanity can overcome greed long enough?
I sure hope so.
To take something else into consideration, to take the future into consideration, the health of the planet and the health of future generations. Do you think we can let go of greed long enough to let that happen?
Well, I know I sure can let go of greed. I have a chapter in my book, Future Esoteric, in the Utopia section called The End of Money. And I would like people to start conceptualizing a world without it. We don't need it. It is a tool for slavery and keeping people in bondage. And it just came out of the barter system. There's enough resources. We don't have to have anybody go to sleep hungry at night. And I think if we can think in terms of what's advantageous to all citizens, because let's face it, we're only as strong as our least common denominator, and about a quarter humans are going to sleep malnourished or hungry tonight, and that should not ever happen with any kind of emerging race such as the humans. We can't be adults if we're going to treat our own kind this way. So we're just going to say the tide brings up all ships, and we have to think about everybody in the human race and treat ourselves as we would treat them.
Absolutely. We have the means to make sure that everyone has food and shelter on this planet.
Yes, we do.
The rest is negotiable. And just to let everybody know, we're going to go a couple minutes over because this is such a fantastic conversation. Not much. This is basically a 30-minute show, but this is really good stuff. I want to shift gears a little bit because I don't want this to be all doom and gloom. I didn't want us to take a journey down that path. What do you do for fun? Because these adventures that you go on are like working vacations, but what do you do to really unwind? Or do you just work that into the routine of the expeditions?
Well, I work in the morning. I typically get some things done. Today, for example, I'm in Santa Cruz, California, and my girlfriend and I went to the clothing optional beach. I got a little haircut on the beach, and we played a little frisbee and got some exercise. I showed her Steamer's Lane where the waves were going off. So I like to travel. I like to be with people. I like to laugh, but I like to get things done. And now I'm about to leave on this epic 4-month trip in South America, a place I haven't been to yet. So this will round out the 7 continents if I can make it down to Antarctica as well. So I'm very excited about taking this trip, and I couldn't have a better travel companion than my girlfriend, Emily, who's sitting here with the light on me right now and helping out with this interview. So kudos to her. Come and meet us both at Stargate to the Cosmos. She's got some incredible tapestries like this that we'll have display, and she'll be selling some as well.
Absolutely. And once again, your website, isn't it cccpublishing.com? Is that where people can find your books and other merch?
That's correct, as well as the other authors that I publish, as well as my material. And we have the Google Books app, so you can browse the books, check it out. If you want to know more about me, bradolsen.com, spelled O-L-S-E-N, Brad Olsen, one word. And also our travel log will be on peacetour.com. And Emily is going to produce a couple shows, and so will I, based on my books. And it's going to be just one epic trip, and we can't wait to get started.
Awesome. Do you have videos available for DVD or viewing online, or is that something for the future that you're going to do?
Yeah, sure. I have a whole several YouTube channels called Esoteric Series, and you can find it, Brad Olsen Esoteric Series, on YouTube. 25 or more videos are up, and then some Brad Olsen videos on various projects I've worked on. And of course, the videos that we produce in South America are forthcoming.
Nice. Brad, thank you so much for coming on to the show. I appreciate it so much. It's refreshing to hear from someone that has such an interesting perspective. And I wish you safe travels as you go around the world, and report back to us. And I'm going to ask you, please share photos. Let us know where to find you. And we want to participate in that adventure with you through photography and video. So thank you so much.
Oh, you're very welcome. And we'll do it again when I get back.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And I want to thank you, the viewer, for watching once again. I know that there's a lot of competition for your attention. And if you're spending time watching this show, that's an honor for me. So thank you for being here. Don't forget to like. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. Don't forget to smash that bell icon for alerts. Facebook, Mysterious Forces Live, Twitter, at My Forces Live. You can find me on Instagram, Snapchat. Thank you so much, Brad Olsen. Michael Moriarty, Pursuing X, thank you so much. Everybody have a great Saturday night. I'll see you right back here tomorrow. Have a safe night. Have a good day. Good night, everybody.